This notion of difficult conversations, and I don't know, is it the political landscape? There's just a lot of difficult conversations happening in our world, which is why it's so timely, our conversation. And, you are my go-to communications guru. So I was like, got to get Robyn in on the podcast on this. So what makes some conversations so darn difficult?
You know what? I want to take a little step back and let's define difficult. Because one of the things that I feel like is what makes communication challenging is that we don't always come at things or definitions or words from the same space. So when we're talking about difficult, let's talk about what we mean by difficult. So how would you define a difficult conversation?
So in the world in which I live, right, working with professionals, so in the workplace, and admittedly so, it seems like scenarios where two people just over a period of time have acknowledged they're just not getting along. Yeah. And so conversations just are difficult and you need each other.
Yeah.
You're in a workspace, you're working for a common purpose, and it's a challenge. So that's what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I would get at too. And the funny thing is, many conversations are difficult because we're coming from so many different places. And so what makes communication difficult is, I believe it's two things. One is that we haven't recognized that we have completely different communication styles. And sometimes in the workplace, you're chugging along and everybody's being polite and everybody's being nice, and you don't recognize the fact that you're communicating something differently than your colleague or your peer is communicating. And then something comes up that you don't agree on, right? And then it becomes, are you kidding me? How could you possibly see that? And this happens in romantic relationships too. Like, how can you possibly see it that way? When I thought I knew you, I thought we were having these conversations. I thought we were on the same team. And here it is, you're thinking this way and I'm thinking that way. And it becomes a huge barrier and complication, because then you're starting to judge, and you've been triggered because you're trying to judge where that other person was coming from. And then what happens is you get completely emotionally triggered by the fact that somebody's not agreeing with you, and also what happens is then it's like somebody who I thought I knew has a completely different way of seeing things. And that makes you feel really unsafe, because all of a sudden, your whole world is turned upside down. So difficult conversations come mostly from the fact that we don't understand that we have a different communication style. And then we think that just because we say something, it's going to be understood the way we intended it to be understood.
Right. And then that opens up to listening, people's bad listening skills.
Yeah. It's listening skills. And it's the fact that they speak a different language, or they hear a different language. So you could say something and you think, and you have all the best intention and you say it, but the other person at this moment is wearing a different pair of glasses. And those different pair of glasses are hearing it from the emotional part of their brain that is saying, I'm sorry, but that sounds an awful lot like the last boyfriend I had.
And they're filling in the blank,
telling me what to do. And that's where it's going to land. And then all of a sudden all the emotion that was harbored from that last boyfriend comes out and starts talking to you. And the person who's talking comes out. And so the person who's now talking to you is not the logical person who started off talking to you. Now it's the emotional person who is all remembering how upset and how triggered they were when they had that conversation with the ex-boyfriend. So all of these things.
And bringing all of that into the interpretation. And when I heard you say that, I was quickly reminded that, when things get said in the workplace, sometimes you're bringing, past experiences into your thoughts. And then it may be how someone has said something that triggers something in addition to what they said. So, let's step back for a second and think, big picture, because what I just referenced is something that may happen over time. And so thinking about the factor of time, which is kind of that vapor element that's always in the room, what role does time play as you're working with individuals and working through difficult conversations?
Time to have the conversations. And yeah, for sure. It's very interesting. You want to make sure that you're in a place of being able to hear and that your emotional level is not raised. So the thing is, it's like if you're in this emotional state and you have all this judgment. I was just coaching someone the other day, and we were role playing because she has this, talking about time, she has this person who just got hired, right? He's 2 weeks into the job, and he's like a bull in a china closet, wanting to tell everybody what to do. Yeah. And she's gotten feedback. She's his direct manager. She's gotten all this feedback. It's like, it sounds like he's after your job. It sounds like he's after your boss's job. I don't like being told what to do, right? And so we were doing this role play, and I would tell her, things that she needed to do. And then all of a sudden she would flip into this talking to him or me, with all this judgment. And it's like, oh no, okay, all right, let's
hold on,
hold it back. And so if you're still feeling that judgment, that's probably not a good time to have the conversation. It's perfectly okay to say, can we take this? Can we come back to this in 5 minutes? Can we come back to this tomorrow? I have something really important I want to say to you, but right now is not the best time. You don't have to say that you're so angry or you're so frustrated at the moment. Just say this may not be the best time, and take it at another time. The other thing is, if it's something that is critical, what you want to do is take those really deep belly breaths. And it's okay to take a deep breath in the middle of a conversation and pause and then let it out slowly, because what that is going to do, that's going to lower that emotional impact that it has, but that the conversation has had, or whatever emotion has been lighted or triggered, and enable you to say something again. The other problem is you don't want it to go too far. If somebody is annoyed you, and that's why I told this woman, my client, he's been there 2 weeks. You can't let it go for too long, because if he goes for 4 weeks, there is no holding back the onslaught of stuff that's going to come out. Not only that, is then he's going to feel blindsided, because it's like, well, I've been doing this for 4 weeks.
Why didn't you say something?
Why didn't he say? Yeah. And so timing, it's a great question. Timing is really important. You don't want to, you want to be in the best emotional state in order to have those conversations, but you need to do it in a timely way so that not too much time has gone by, and that it's not, it is not too late.
And with that technique of that, the belly breathing, as you referenced.
Yeah.
This is where I say time being kind of that vapor element, because it's all around us. All of us have the same amount of time. And in particular, if time passes, then things just get layered, and then you just feel somewhat uncomfortable. Oh, it doesn't make sense now. It'll be okay, when really it won't. And time, as it refers in the moment, and this is kind of where I want to go in terms of when two people are truly at an impasse, is when those internal triggers start to ignite. That's that opportunity to say, okay, I've got to do my belly breathing and create a little space here, even if it's okay, hold that thought. If you just give me a moment, I'm going to step away and I'll be right back. And you don't have to go into any explanation. But if that provides you the space to get your head and find your voice for a healthy conversation.
Right. There's another trick you can do.
That's a good thing. And are these tricks in your book, Robyn?
They are not. I have to write a second.
You just got to follow you then. I'll make sure everyone has the links to follow you, because I've heard you share this.
I'll have to write a second book.
Yes,
The other trick you want to do is to name the emotion in the moment, because what you were just describing, that's what made me think about it, because you're feeling that emotion. And what we try to do is it's like, okay, I don't want to feel this emotion, so I'm going to squash it. I'm going to sit on it. And then time goes by, and then it starts to pile up.
Right.
And you know what happens when things pile up? Eventually they blow.
Yeah.
And it either results in a blowout or it results in this passive aggressive behavior.
Yes.
Which you do these little tiny things that are just.
That's what Yelp is for, the passive aggressive behavior.
Yeah. And the other thing that happens is you get sick. So neither of those are good things. So when you're feeling an emotion, one of the best ways, and this is like the scientific brain science researched, is that if you just name the emotion, it starts to dissipate. You know, so you're in this conversation and you're feeling really, really angry. And you're feeling angry, you're feeling insulted, you're feeling belittled. And what you can do is say to yourself, I am feeling belittled. I'm feeling like this person does not respect me. And then what that does is it enables your brain to calm down and recognize it. And then it can calm you down. It can get you back present. But when we run from it, it's a different thing. You can run. Yeah. I mean, it's not to say that the other technique of taking space sometimes is works too. But another thing, if you can't do that, you can and then the second half of that is to reframe what's going on. You know, so what that means is like, you know, I'm feeling this emotion. This person just said something that really ticked me off. And then you get curious and then you reframe it. Get curious. I wonder if they just had a fight with their boss. I wonder if their wife is divorcing them. You know, so all of those things is a way to reframe the situation so that you feel better about what just happened. Doesn't mean if it's true, doesn't matter if it's true or not, but you feel better.
I really like that as a technique, and something I often invite clients to do is practice with this in low risk situations. So depending on the family member, it may or may not be low risk, but typically we have a little more bandwidth, you know, in which to navigate a training ground of sorts. But in particular, in high risk situations, trying to pull out a technique that you just aren't accustomed to using is challenging. So I invite people when there are sentiments that are coming up that you know what they are for you, and if they haven't served you well in the past, consider how to be aware of them in the moment. Recruit a family member that says, oh, there's that characteristic you asked me to look out for. I see that now. And allow yourself to build the capability, because, you know, we're in this day and age of 24/7 information. Life is not as simple as reading a blog post and then making it happen, or listening to, as fabulous as our conversation is, thinking, oh, I'm going to take those tips and make that work in my next difficult conversation with my coworker. So it's about practicing these techniques and knowing how to pivot to them in the moment.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, totally. Or you can hire a coach like me and Monique.
Absolutely. To help you, because, you know, we're there and we are trained to be in that, you know, a non-judgmental space, and our agenda is only to help you achieve the end goal. Whereas, as I've heard from so many, you know, you think your family and friends are coaching you, and they may in fact be giving you their opinion on how to do it, you know, and we're trained to help you be the best version of yourself. So really good point there, Robyn. What suggestions do you have for, you know, kind of beyond this? And I know you've written a book about, in particular, when it just comes to speaking and communications. What other tips do you have for helping individuals navigate difficult conversations?
Yeah, you brought it up once before, but one of them is listening, the way to listen. You know, and like I've read a lot of different steps about listening, and one of the simplest ways to think about listening steps is like in 3 steps. You know, you're either listening to win, which is you're listening to hear the content so that I can say something better. You know, and so all you're doing is you're listening. It's like, okay, oh, she said that, I can win. I can win. Another way of listening, and sometimes that's necessary if you need to like give. The other way of listening is listening to fix. So you're listening, and then you're listening for the information until you get to the point where, oh, I know exactly how to
Ah.
answer her. I know what's wrong and I can fix it.
And then you stop listening.
Yes. And then you stop listening because, oh, I've got my fix. I've got my fix. I mean, and I've like, I adore my husband. He's been fabulous. But, that's that whole concept of the male, female, different communication styles where men are usually listening to fix, so you're listening and then it's like, okay, I got the answer. That's not usually helpful. And the third way, and the most appropriate and the most effective way for communication is to listen to learn. So you want to listen to learn what's going on. And that's where that curiosity thing is like, so what can I learn in this conversation? So what can I learn about that other person? And one of the things that I want people to start listening for is listening. I said at the top of this conversation about their communication style. What kind of communication style do they have? What do they need? What are the kinds of things that they are needing right now?
What are some examples of those when you think of communication styles?
So I love this thing that's based on a brain science study about reward and threat. It's like, because the brain is processed to value what, to go after what is going to reward them and run away from what is going to threaten you. And so we are all kind of primed with a priority of things that we are looking for to make us feel whole and feel like in that connection. So I broke it down to 6 different needs, and the one need is importance. I need to feel important. So if you're listening to somebody and one of their high needs is to feel important so that they have status, they have impact, they're making a difference. If that's a high need for them, then you're going to talk to them in a completely different way. Another, and I call it the ICU needs, because what people really want is to be seen.
Yes.
And if they're not being seen, they don't feel that they exist, and then they're going to act out, because if they're not existing, then they're going to die. So when you think about being seen, it's like these are the needs that people need to feel in order to feel seen. And so they're feeling importance. And another need is to feel connected. They need to feel connected to another person. They need to feel that other person likes them. So that's another high. That's a I and a C. And then some people have another I, which is needing to feel independent. They don't want to be micromanaged. They don't want to be told what to do. And so with those people who have this need for, if you're listening and you feel like, oh yeah, I got this. Like, that's a cue that they have a high need for independence. So how can you give them choices? How can you talk to them as like that? And then one of the other ones is inclusion. They want to feel like they're part of something. They want to feel like they are not being left out. And another need is clarity.
Clarity, I remember you.
Yeah, clarity is really, really important, because those people, and I work in finance a lot. I work with a lot of financial advisors. I work with some people in engineering and IT. It's like, no, I got to know exactly when, I got to know exactly how, and I need to know that T is crossed, and it's got to be like this. So, and if they don't get that, if they don't get clear, if they don't get clear communication from you, they don't have a clear time of the beginning and an end of a meeting, they're going to get stressed out. And they're going to feel like, I don't know what to do. And you're going to get less productivity out of them. And then the one U that I have in this model is usefulness. So it's like how people really want to know that what they're doing is making a difference. So how can you, and a lot of times as leaders or as even colleagues, it's like, just do this, do that. Okay, we need this done by 8:00. But some people are like, yeah, I could do it by 8:00, but why?
Right.
And when you can then talk about the why, they're going to get more invested in the what that you just asked them to do. And so when you listen to learn, you want to be listening to see what that high priority need in that other person is, so that then you can speak to that need. And then you can avoid triggering the lack of that need. Because when they have been triggered with the lack of that need, then they're like they feel like they're going to be they feel like literally they feel like you're killing them.
Yeah.
And
You're just suffocating me.
Yeah, it's super dramatic analogy, but it's sort of what the brain is doing, because the brain is kind of primitive in a lot of ways.
You know, a lot of some of those points or suggestions that you were just making when you were providing that 6 needs kind of perspective. I was just taking a leadership group through a strength workshop yesterday. And so like one should know their communications styles, one also to know their own strengths. Well, what was interesting is it was an opportunity for everyone to reveal and gain clarity and understand what their own talents and strengths are, and then that of the leadership team. And there was a lot of laughter and a lot of, understanding. Oh, so that's why, I observe you doing this, this, and this, because that's how you are naturally wired. And so at the end of our time together, I invited each of the participants to kind of give, I said, a love letter to the rest of the team that shed light on what has to happen to get the best of me?
Right.
What has to happen to get the worst of me? And what is it that I need from you? And so going through this with strengths, and it sounds very similar to that with communications, when you can have those open and authentic conversations, it takes some of the mystery out trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that you have experience with taking groups through and people becoming enlightened, but it is such a worthwhile investment because, as I shared with them, you're still responsible for how you respond based on your talents, because we can't control other people in the workplace, but you can control how you respond. So whether it be in conversations or etc., having that self-awareness, learning how to manage your own triggers, and know what in fact causes the triggers is so incredibly powerful for those on a leadership trajectory. And because the pressure only ratchets up, right? So the earlier in your career, I figure you can kind of really understand these elements of yourself, the more powerful you will be and the more opportunity you'll have to bring others along, because you'll also be modeling the way for this is how you handle difficult conversations and you don't fly off the handle.
Exactly.
Do build in emotional intelligence with this as well, but that's for another podcast.
I know. I love that. I love doing that exercise too. It's like, and like doing it with DISC or strength finders or this. It's like all of it is so enlightening. And like you said, and I love also what you said, you're still responsible. It's like, so it's not an excuse to say, oh, well, that's how I am. And so you didn't meet me where I am, then I'm not going to listen to you. I mean, because it's both parties have to play fair. It's like, now that I'm aware of this, I'm going to try to take it into account. And when I don't, then you're responsible for either reminding me or just taking into account what I just did. So it's really always a give and take, not an excuse to hide behind.
Yeah. So you've been able to really tee up some terrific insights in terms of tips for what people can do in managing their own emotions, some frameworks to understand the needs of others. What final thoughts do you have, Robyn, as you consider just what's valuable information for those who are looking to navigate difficult conversations in the workplace?
Yeah, I believe that becoming self-aware and building your own confidence is a really critical part of this. And I've been finding, I go into a coaching session or even a training session, working on some of the communication aspects of it, and end up working on personal branding. And because they are so interrelated, because so many times when you're not feeling confident as a leader, it's because you haven't owned all of the value that you're providing yourself. And so I really feel like it's really critical to work on your personal brand in addition to working on all of these communication skills. Because knowing the value that you present and being able to communicate that value is going to put you in a whole nother place so that people understand you better. You understand yourself better. And so communication is going to be easier. That makes sense?
Nice. Yeah. And when people are oftentimes looking to get some tips from a mentor or listen to a particular speaker, and if you have an opportunity to ask a question, I think that is a powerful question to ask the individual who you see as a leader is, how have you navigated the building of your brand? What things have you done? I really do believe that sometimes we forget some of those things that we invested in along the way. And then people just see all the big parts, the above water of the iceberg, right? The pieces that show up, oh, I have this job title at this company. And I think sharing more stories of how people got there is powerful.
Yeah. And I mean, what you just said is that it's actually a brain science fact that this whole business of imposter syndrome, our brain does forget the good because we're so attracted to the negative because we think the negative is going to keep us safe. Again, that brain trying to keep us safe. And it's like, oh, I'm going to remember where that snake is. I'm going to remember when that person yelled at me. I'm going to remember this because it's never going to happen again. But then what we drop off, because we have a limited capacity of things to remember, what we drop off is all that, that time that client said, oh, I love what you do. Or that time when my boss told me how invaluable what I just did was. We forget about that. Right. And so it's really pulling that back out to remind ourselves and to hear, like Monique was saying, like you were saying, it's like to hear what other people have done and forgotten. And it's like really important.
Yeah, I frame those as you capture those because those are your money play.
Yeah.
Right. Because when it comes time to have a conversation for a next opportunity, having that history of the money plays of basically what you just described, those moments when you did make a big difference, those are the stories to be told.
Yeah.
That will make a difference. And people will want to pay you for that in that next opportunity. So thank you, Robyn. So glad to have you with me today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Bye. Thank you.